Hey friends, I'm really excited to bring you this interview with Robert Macdonald. He plays with a band called Pennyland. They got some great music, so we're going to talk about his piping and everything else that he does, singing and fluting and whistling and banjoing and some other stuff too, I'm pretty sure comes up as we're talking. And we're going to talk through one of his band's albums as well and hear some samples from the track. And this month's dope giveaway is going to be a copy of that album. So I'm just I've got my the list of Patreon and otherwise supporters here, and I'm just gonna see what the Cthulhu Dice Tower dishes out for us here. And that is way too high, so I got a D20 here, but we need to have a number under 13 here. Another one too high. There we go. Here we go. 7. So that's gonna be Ted. Ted Garvin, congratulations, and thank you very much for supporting the show. I will reach out to you directly with a copy of this album ASAP, and I hope y'all enjoy the show. Robert's a really cool cat and a really pleasant person to talk with, so thanks again. Bye. Time has gone on, I've found it's more and more common, like in work, like when professionally, anybody east of the Mississippi, especially you get over on the East Coast, is just like really likely to just default call me Jim. I must be more of a thing over there. I don't know. But
that's funny.
Yeah, at this point, similar. I'm Jim to most of my coworkers and to a lot of my like music associates as well. So it's very comfortable for me either way.
Yeah, that's a tricky thing. It's similar. My dad is Robert as well, but he always went by Bob. So I could never do
You couldn't be Bob.
I know.
It's taken.
So, yeah, it's tricky. Exactly.
So Robert is the way to go for yourself, huh?
Yeah, it's what honestly, when I was a child, it was Bobby.
So
Bobby.
I had
Bob and Bobby, and then at some point, like in high school, I got embarrassed of that name and switched it to Robert. And now I kind of regret it. I'm like, oh, Bobby's kind of a cool name, but it's too hard to switch back.
Is it just me, or does it seem to you like Bobby is the kind of nickname that became really, really common, and then maybe because it was so common, maybe that's where that sense, like it maybe almost became a joke name in a way, and so maybe that's where that sense of embarrassment came from. But then now, because it became a joke name, it's now really uncommon, so it would be a unique thing to be called Bobby now.
Yeah, that's pretty true. I think for me too, there was the girl's name, Bobby, right? So B-O-B-B-I-E.
Yeah.
And oftentimes people would misspell my name with the I-E, and then I was like, oh, that was embarrassing. So that was part of it too. You know?
Speaking of being as a child being embarrassed by girl things, you play flute. I was just talking to Will Woodson about this, and I was surprised to find out. Like I'm perfectly happy to admit, like I'd like to think I'm more evolved now, but when I was a kid, I thought flutes were for girls. You never would have caught me dead playing the flute. And
well, there's something to that, right?
Was that for you too? Because like I had a friend who played flute, and I didn't make fun of him for it or anything like that, you know. But I did it like internally. I was like, "What is he thinking? That's a girl instrument," you know.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's in my mind. I mean, this is totally ridiculous, but in my mind, there's a difference between the silver flute, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Flute, and the wooden Irish flute. And I didn't grow up playing flute or anything like that. I only took up flute maybe 10 years ago, and it was always the wooden flute.
Yeah.
So I didn't associate it that way. And in in Ireland, where that's such a popular instrument, it's as many men, probably more men than women playing flute.
No, that makes sense. That's what Will was telling me, was that historically there was even like an idea floating around that women didn't have the lung capacity to play flute. It was very much a man's instrument.
That's ridiculous. That's funny though.
Yeah, it's funny how we could have like the opposite biases. So, but what you're telling me is like I can go ahead and revert to my misogyny or whatever it was that was affecting me as a child, and just replace it with more specifically, silver flutes are for girls, wood flutes are for boys.
if you want to be a misogynist, yes, you can do that.
I just want to keep all my options open, so I always have
okay.
somewhere I can go. But now maybe this shows my age and not that that's a bad thing either, but do you feel like maybe part of your preference to not be called Bobby as a child, did it maybe have anything to do with that cartoon Bobby's World? Do you remember that cartoon? Or was that just me?
Oh, I remember. Oh, yeah, I love that cartoon. Actually,
yeah, I love that show too.
Because I shared a name with it. In fact, I remember showing it to my boys when they were little, and they loved it too. But yeah, maybe, right? Because then it's a popular name and it's a cartoon character,
and it's like a little kid. So then maybe as you got older, you didn't want to be like a little kid.
Yeah. Well, and then there were things like, I mean, this is just really specific to me, but I had a friend in elementary school that used to turn my name into Barbie, and he called me Barbie.
Oh, yeah.
Barbie, and that was so things like that, you know. I think it was just a buildup of probably things that influenced the decision.
My middle name is Marion, and I had a lot of those. You know, once friends found out, I was so mad. My sister to get at me, my sister would tell my new friends what my middle name was. You know.
Oh yeah, that's cruel.
yeah. I wasn't. It wasn't until I was a grown up that I realized that was Howie Mandel voicing Bobby in Bobby's World.
Yeah, I know. It's so great. He's so funny.
It's funny. So flutes or Bobby's World. Which one shall we follow? Which trail are we following in this conversation? Huh? Sorry,
I think either one.
I'm all over the place, man. So maybe we. I was thinking maybe. So usually with an episode, I open with like drones, but I thought, heck, let's open with track 1 of the most recent Pennyland album. That Scots on the Rocks track.
Yeah, sure.
Then we get to hear you playing some pipes. So, imagine we've come out of that a couple minutes ago, and so we've just heard you playing, those were border pipes, right?
On that track, I don't remember now, because that album had highland pipes on some tracks and border pipes. Oh, maybe they were highlands. Yeah, I think those may have been borders.
Oh, I just said highlands. I think I've got some friends who are going to get mad at us if we say highlands and borders. We have to say great highland pipes and border pipes.
Oh wow! Well, if we say big pipes, that's what I like.
There you go. Big pipes, little pipes. Yeah, that's the way.
I got that from Barry Shears. That's what he used to say. He'd always call his highland pipes big pipes.
The big pipes. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of Barry Shears, do you know the guy? Because you do Cape Breton stuff. Have you met him?
Yeah, well, I know him. I don't know how well he remembers me. There was a time when I was in pretty regular contact with him. So I was introduced to Cape Breton piping through Larry Erdman, who I know you know.
Oh yeah, I know Larry for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, Larry's great. So he was my introduction into that world, and then cool. he knew. Well, he worked originally with Hamish Moore and got introduced and turned on to Cape Breton music through Hamish Moore. And then kind of through that ended up finding his way to Barry Shears. And so he knew Barry Shears. And there was a couple of years in a row where he brought him out to his home here in Utah and workshops with a small group of people. So I met Barry in those workshops. And then so I did a master's degree in folklore, and my master's thesis.
Was that the coolest thing in the world to study?
It was pretty cool. It was different than what I thought I was getting into, actually, which was fine. I went in there totally with the idea, like, I'm gonna study music and I'm gonna study folk music, and I did sort of do that. But in retrospect, ethnomusicology may have been a better fit for what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And then folklore is an interesting field. I think they often say about folklorists that they spend as much time trying to define what folklore is as they do actually studying it. Yeah. So it's a tricky thing to explain, and you kind of get you can get a feeling for what it is, but then trying to explain it to other people can be tough.
Dude, so, I'm an armchair folklore enthusiast, so in no way am I qualified or anything, but I've often dreamed that if I ever do make a stab at higher education, that's top of my list is something to do with folklore. Which maybe I would be disappointed. I don't know. Did you ever
No, probably not.
Because I like the stories and stuff. Like Tolkien had this essay that I reference all the time called Mythopoeia. It was kind of a response to C.S. Lewis kind of dismissing the value of myth and legend. And Tolkien was kind of being like, no, it's actually maybe the most valuable thing in the world. And that's the kind of thing that gets me yes, this is the righteous truth. Myth and legend is very important.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, and that's where the field really started, was with myth, legend, and fairy tale, like the collecting of those stories, and the sort of how it kind of became a field that was a cross between anthropology and the study of English literature, really. So oftentimes, that's like the perfect setup if you're going to go into folklore, is to have both. I had a bachelor's in English literature, and I had a minor in anthropology, which set me up well to go into folklore as a master's.
How much was music a motivator to go that direction too?
Well, honestly, Cape Breton music was a big motivator. That was always my intention. So I met Larry, and I started playing at his sessions and learning a lot about Cape Breton piping. And then
was that down in
Barry
Payson?
Shears. That was down in
Springville, yeah?
Springville. Yeah, Springville, sorry. Yeah, in Springville. And then I met Barry Shears around the time I started my master's program. And so then I decided that I wanted to make that the focus of my thesis. And so I was able to get a grant to travel to Cape Breton for a few weeks. Oh. And I spent a little time with Barry Shears. He was very kind. He hosted me in his home in Nova Scotia.
That's too cool.
And then I traveled to the island and
intended to actually Prince Edward's Island?
Cape Breton Island.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Here I am thinking of Anne of Green Gables, and
well, they're close in proximity,
and we're talking about Cape Breton. My bad.
You could easily think they're the same place, but no, they're two different islands.
They're both. Yeah, speaking of myth and legend, they're both mythical to me. I've never been there. They're the places of legend for sure, in my mind.
Oh, yeah, and they won't. At least I've never been to Prince Edward Island, but Cape Breton Island does not disappoint. It's pretty spectacular. Yeah. So I went there and actually intending to look at Cape Breton piping specifically, but for a whole bunch of reasons. While I was out there, I switched my focus and actually looked at fiddle tune composition. Actually.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So
did you run into any troubles with the grant when you came back? You're like, I actually changed my mind while I was in the field.
No, luckily not really. I was able to justify it.
Yeah.
I mean, the people that approved my grant were my advisor and one of the other faculty members that I knew pretty well. So they were very understanding.
Maybe they were even relieved, like, oh, fiddle's a lot more normal than piping. Good.
I think I think that my advisor was a little disappointed because she was very interested in piping. Her partner was a Northumbrian piper, and I think she was a little.
Did you just almost call them Northumbrians? See, we would have been in trouble. We would have been in trouble.
I stumbled over that. I was thinking Northumberland pipes, Northumbrian pipes. It's Northumbrian, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think I see Northumberland pipes thrown around sometimes, but I feel like Northumbrian is more typical. But.
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Not that I'm an authority, of course.
Yeah.
Armchair everything over here, man.
Yeah. Well, so there's an old fiddler in Cape Breton by the name of John McDougall, and I had encountered his playing on a series of recordings that was put out. I think it was the North American Heritage Series, and they go through the old Cape Breton fiddlers, so not the more kind of younger tradition, the hipper tradition, but the really old stuff that's scratchy and fiery, and I don't know. So I encountered his playing, and I had never heard anything like it. I mean, it was so like rough but earthy and like almost tribal in the sound. Like I can't really put words to it, and I was blown away by it. So he was always kind of like, wow, that's amazing. If I get the chance to meet him while I'm in Cape Breton, I should do it.
Well,
the other thing about go ahead.
Don't let me force you into weighing in on something if you don't feel comfortable with weighing in on anything. But am I thinking wrong? I'm thinking maybe I even heard Barry Shears himself talk about part of the uniqueness of the Cape Breton old fiddle style being that the meeting of the waters, if pipe tune humor, the meeting of European fiddles meeting the native First Nations people there. And so when you say tribal, I wonder, like, maybe there's something very, very precisely tribal about it. I don't know. This is me again, armchair everything. But well, are you familiar with that, or is that a thing that people talk about?
That's not what just to clarify. That's not what I meant by tribal. I guess that's maybe not a good word to use to describe it. It's hard to find the right words, but I do know what you're talking about because. From my experience, there are kind of two schools of thought about Cape Breton fiddling. One school of thought says, actually, this is the closest we can get to like 17th century Scottish fiddling.
Gotcha.
It's much closer to what that is than modern Scottish fiddling, which was influenced by Europe. and the dance traditions there. So that's one school of thought. And then the idea is that Cape Breton was so isolated for so long, there wasn't even a causeway. You had to travel there by boat. That they really maintained this tradition in Cape Breton.
It becomes like a time capsule.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other school of thought is kind of what you're describing, where the Scottish fiddling meets like French fiddling, French Canadian fiddling meets native music of some kind, and then you end up with something that's kind of new and different. And I don't know that I can see both points, and I'm not enough of an expert to say like this is what it is. I honestly don't know that anyone's enough of an expert to really know. I think it's all conjecture.
It does seem like with most things, if you think you've got a hard and fast answer, it's because you haven't looked at it hard and long enough. If you look long enough, it's going to be pretty muddy. Who knows?
That's what I think too. Yeah.
Well, you're really good at staying. You're really good at keeping track of what you were talking about before I interrupt you. So I appreciate that skill. You're already showing like you're really good at that. So carry on. Sorry about that.
Okay. Well, I was just gonna say. So John McDougall again. So I encountered his music like I described, and thought I'll keep an eye out for him. And he happened to be performing at one evening at a distillery while I was out in Cape Breton, and I went to hear him live. And same thing. I mean, his performance. He's not one of the hotshot Cape Breton fiddlers, and there were a lot of those when I was there that attracted large crowds of people, tourists and locals. And so he was just performing like in the background at a little restaurant in a distillery there. But
that's wild.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, there's so many Cape Breton fiddlers out there. I mean, they're like a dime a dozen out there. So that was the gig he had that night, and I went and heard him, and then went up to him afterwards and was like, can I come and talk to you? I want to interview you. I want to find out more about specifically his tune composing. So I had read an article about him before I had traveled out that he had composed. So, okay, let me backtrack a little bit. There was a famous composer in Cape Breton music known as Dan R. Macdonald, and he is suspected to have composed around 2,000 tunes, fiddle tunes, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And he is probably the most influential Cape Breton tune composer. And then I read in this article that John McDougall was claiming to have composed over 20,000
Holy moly.
tunes. And like that's astonishing. But then he what's even more interesting is he makes the claim that the tunes that he is composing, I'm putting air quotes around that, you can't see me, but that's what I'm doing, that he's not actually composing them, that he's being gifted them from the spirits of the dead Cape Breton fiddlers that came before him.
That is cool. That's real cool.
Yeah, so there's this supernatural element in his composing. So that stuck with me too, and I thought I gotta find out more about this guy. So I rolled up to his little trailer in the morning, and I could hear him fiddling as I was walking up to his door. And when I entered, he showed me he was in the middle of composing a tune right there on the spot. And he has so many tunes that he doesn't have names for them. Like he just has numbered them. He doesn't know what names to give them. So he's like, here, why don't you put your name on this tune? And we'll call that tune after you. So somewhere in his troves of fiddle tunes that he's handwritten, there's a tune with my name on it. Man, I don't know what happened to it.
Speaking of folklore, I mean, this sounds like the archetypical like wizard hermit character, right? That's just like
for sure.
And you'd think, I mean, it's also almost magical that like you just find him fiddling in the corner at this distillery one night, and then of course even at the appointment, like to his little, I'm imagining like beautiful little cottage with fairy lights floating all around it. As you're walking up, of course he's fiddling, because one assumes that this guy probably doesn't even sleep. He probably doesn't even eat. He just he gets all of the energy that he needs to stay alive precisely from the fairy magic that is coursing through his fiddle bow, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think you've romanticized it even further than I have to some extent. Cape Breton's beautiful, but there's a lot of poverty there, so it wasn't wasn't like a beautiful homely cottage. It was more like a bit of a rough trailer situation, but
But filled to bursting with just sheets and sheets of music, I guess. Huh?
Yeah, books and books of tunes that he composed.
I've been kind of idly Googling around while you've been talking, just trying to keep track of some of the stuff you're saying, and I came across your dissertation.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Well, there you
so
go.
I will put a link to your dissertation in the show notes for anybody who wants to check it out. Just while you've been describing it, I've been almost following along a couple of the ideas. I just happened upon a couple of them with my eyeballs as you were talking, and this is exciting
Wow.
stuff. I'm seeing a
I
few
haven't looked at
tunes that
that
I
in
even recognize too.
a long time, maybe a decade since I've looked at that. Okay.
Hey, if you want to find it, I'll have it in the show notes so
All right, maybe
you
I'll
can
go
go
back and
back
look at it.
yeah, that's
Try not
right.
to cringe too much.
Ain't that always the way, right?
Oh,
But
it is.
I bet this will be one of those situations where you'll go back and there will be some things that you'd forgotten that you cringe at, but I bet there will be some things you'd forgotten that were actually really insightful and good, and you'll go, wait, who wrote this? I wrote this? Oh, good job.
Well, I hope so. That's very generous of you to say.
Oh, I'm sure that'll be the case. That's super cool, man. So then maybe actually let's put if you're cool with it, let's pull in another track from that. How do you pronounce that track name? Is it Pain?
So yeah, that is the
Or the album
Scottish
name?
Gaelic,
I meant, yeah.
but it's also Scottish Gaelic for Pennyland.
Oh, that's
So
perfect. Double perfect.
yeah, just the
Well,
Gaelic word for Pennyland.
track 5 is called Fairy Love Song. So since we're talking fairies anyway, what do you say we maybe listen to a sample of Fairy Love Song?
Sure, sounds great.
Sit and sigh, pulling bracken. Why do I sit and sigh on a hillside dreary when I see the plover rising or the curlew wheeling? Then I draw my mortal lover back to me is stealing. Why do I sit and sigh, pulling bracken? Why do I sit and sigh, all alone and weary, when the day wears away? Sad I look up down the valley, Ilkesan with a stare sets my heart a-thrilling. Why do I sit and sigh, pulling bracken? Why do I sit and sigh, all alone and weary? Ah, but there is something lacking. Ah, but I am weary. Come, my blithe and bonny lad, come more than now to cheer me. Why do I sit and sigh, pulling bracken? Why do I sit and sigh, parted from my dearie?
I've been playing
what, cutting bracken? See, for long enough that I can't even remember the name. But I don't. I've been playing that tune since I first started playing pipes. Like I think I learned that tune the first year that I was learning to play pipes, and so it's been forever. And yet I don't think I would have realized that this melody line is the same melody line. Though I'm starting to suspect that I'm like particularly bad at noticing concordances between different versions of tunes. Like I have friends who post things on Facebook and stuff. They're like, $10 to whoever can tell me the name of this pipe tune, but they're playing it on fiddle or something like that. I'm like, I have no idea. And then as soon as they say it, I'm like, oh, I've known that song for 20 years. Why did I not recognize it? Right. But I don't. This is a super cool rendition. Like I've never heard it other than on pipe, so this was super fun for me.
Oh, well, thanks. And yeah, I mean, it could be that just, that when you take something to the pipe band tradition, it gets sort of, I don't know what the word is, militarized.
For sure.
It often
totally,
changes the expression of the older source tune.
Yeah, if nothing else, right on the face of it, of course, I always played it a lot faster than it's done here.
Right.
But also, I've never heard the lyrics, and the word bracken isn't a word that comes up in my, daily conversations often anyway, so that whether it's pulling bracken or cutting bracken, that connection's going to happen once I hear that word, of course, but
of course, yeah.
What was it? What instrumentation were you contributing to this track? Do you remember?
So I do. For that track, I think it was I can't remember. It was pipes for sure. So I think there's some drums in the beginning and then the pipes at the end, and those I think were the big pipes. And then I'm trying to remember if I added some flute to that.
I was thinking there was some flute or whistle somewhere in there.
Yeah, if there's flute or whistle, that's me. I did all the fluting and the whistling for the album, so I think. I think I did add some flute to that, to the end part of that tune where we kind of break out into the jig version of the tune.
And had that come, I want to know about your piping background, and did that inform, like, did you play in a pipe band before and pick up cutting bracken and then bringing that to the band, or was that a coincidence? But maybe just back up way before I even asked that question and tell me about how you first got into pipes.
Yeah, well, that's a long answer.
Let's go, man.
Story.
This show is called Droning On, and we're going to prove it today.
Okay. Well, most people don't want to listen to the whole story of how you came into bagpiping.
You are talking to the niche community who does want to listen.
Well, that's really a pleasure to have someone who wants to listen. Golly, so my last name is Macdonald, so I have Scottish ancestry, and when I was a young child, my dad was always really kind of proud of our Scottish heritage, and that was really emphasized with me. And I just kind of, I think, by osmosis, took that pride on. Like, yeah, I'm Scottish. I have Scottish ancestry. And my dad used to take us to the parades in this time of year in July, but only to see the pipe bands. And that was the highlight of the parade. That's really all he went for.
I had a very similar father. I can relate big time.
Oh, I think, it's probably a pretty common story. And so I was like the same way, really moved by the pipe bands and the parades. And then I remember he took us to the Utah Scottish Festival a few times. I remember we went while it was at Camp Williams. Is that right?
That's right.
University of Utah. Yeah, it was there for a while, and then it moved to Murray Park for a while.
That's right.
And so
then Thanksgiving Point for a while, and now it's at the fairgrounds.
Yep. So we went to those when I was a kid growing up, and I loved that. So that was all sort of in the background.
What town were you growing up in when you were a kid?
I was in South Jordan. West Jordan when I was really little, and then South Jordan when I was a little bit older. That area. Like
Salt Lake Scots would have been the closest band, I'm guessing, yeah?
Yeah,
or maybe
it's
Utah
very
pipe
possible that the Utah pipe band I know I saw for sure. And
yeah.
I probably saw the Salt Lake Scots, but honestly, I don't. I was pretty little.
I
don't recall very well.
It's all bagpipes, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they, of course, the Salt Lake Scots changed their kilts, their plaid.
They did, that's
used
right,
to have the red Scot plaid, and then they have the more modern Salt Lake Scots plaid. So
no offense to their old ones, it's fine, but I love their new one, and I love that it's the story behind it is that like one of their own came up with it and stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
That's really cool. Yeah, Kate McMaster. Patterns, so pretty cool.
And how's that for a cool surname? Wouldn't you? I mean, McDonald's cool, but wouldn't you like to be McMaster?
I don't know. I mean, that pride in my Scottish heritage is still pretty strong with me.
Yeah.
I love my last name, so I know it can be a cliche, or it can be associated with the fast food chain, but I still love it.
No, look, man, I've fantasized of changing my name just to add a Mick or Mac to the beginning and just leave the rest the same, or an O apostrophe. I could go Irish either way. It'd be cool.
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing more Scottish than putting a Mac in front of your name.
That's right. Carry on.
Yeah. So, and then my dad always said, this is probably a common story too, that he was going to learn to play the pipes. And one year for Christmas, I remember my mom gave him a Blackwood practice chanter, a really nice one.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm going to learn to play the pipes. And then just year after year passed, and he never did. And at some point, I don't remember exactly what happened when I was a teenager. I must have expressed some like level of interest in the pipes, or maybe I didn't. And my mom just thought, hey, he might want to learn instead of my dad. And so one year for Christmas, I got a really, crummy wooden practice chanter with a plastic mouthpiece.
Oh, I know the one,
a cassette tape with some recordings about how to play and a little instructional booklet. And,
if you're lucky, the tone holes actually go all the way to the board, but they don't always.
Yeah. And so that was like high school, and I dinked around with it, and I think I learned the scale, but I actually learned it kind of wrong. But that was really all that happened with it. And around that time, when I think I was 15 years old, I got really into wanting to play the guitar. And so I started learning to play guitar. I played in a really terrible punk rock band when I was a teenager.
But look, man, like a garage teenager punk rock band, to say it's really, really terrible is to say it's really good. That's exactly what it's supposed to be.
Is that what it is? Really?
Absolutely,
oh my gosh.
man. That's the authenticity coming through.
Of that I will never share with anybody.
Get it on the internet. Come on.
It's never. But it was a good experience, right? It was a good musical experience for me, and a good experience for my, the first time of playing with other musicians, which is a whole skill unto itself.
Yeah.
Very different from playing by yourself. So.
There is something so special about the punk tradition that came out of Scotland specifically in like the late 70s to like the mid 80s or so. Do you feel like that? Were you drawn to that in particular? Maybe that had something to do with Scottishness, or was it just like punk is cool, I'm going to do whatever kind of punk is around?
It was more the latter. Honestly,
sure.
The punk choice wasn't even really mine. I was interested in a lot of different music, more alternative rock, honestly, than punk. But my friend, who was the drummer, was more interested in punk. And so he kind of brought that influence to the group.
That's cool.
Like I said, I mean, to even call it anything is doing it more justice than it deserves.
Was this one of those situations where like you showed up to the first band practice and were like, maybe by next time I'll know some chords, but let's go?
Pretty much. We were all learning together. So it was really my neighborhood group of friends, and we all picked up different instruments and just started learning how to play together. So
sometimes
in the beginning,
it works. Sometimes it does.
Well, it did in the end. I mean, we were able to actually play songs.
Well, it's great to have other people to feed off of too, to all be learning together.
Yeah, exactly. And to be all kind of the same level. So you're not just this really inexperienced musician trying to fit in with more experienced musicians.
I've heard, I don't know if it's true, but I've heard that this is how UB40, the British reggae band, got together. It was like a group of friends, and maybe this isn't true, right? But this is what I've heard. It was like a group of friends, none of whom were particularly musical, and they were all just like, guys, we're going to start a band. Everybody pick an instrument, and they all just like basically went into a basement and came out 90 days later as UB40.
Wow, how cool. That's a great story. Whether it's true or not, I want to believe that.
Let's not look it up, huh?
Yeah. So anyhow, so around that time, so that was my teenage years. I was picking up guitar. And then around, I think I was a senior or maybe a junior in high school, a friend of mine, and this is going to come out of left field, but it'll all kind of come together hopefully. A friend of mine introduced me for the first time to the band Jethro Tull. Which at first I was like, what is this? I was always kind of interested in classic rock, but this was just something totally different. But he was the biggest Tull fan I have ever met, for sure. Maybe that's possible. I mean, his room was plastered in Tull art and Tull posters, and
really?
So I couldn't help but being like sucked into that world. And so through him, I got really into Jethro Tull, and for maybe, I don't know, a couple of years, that was one of my go-to bands I listened to more than any other. And of course, everyone knows that the signature sound of Jethro Tull is Ian Anderson's flute. So
Heck
that
yeah.
wow, the flute is really cool. And then there's
and that's
one
your
track,
manly flute too, man.
that's your silver flute played by. Maybe he's not. I don't know. So there might be some differing opinions about how manly Ian Anderson is, but
yeah,
I mean, it's
that's
definitely
true.
in the rock tradition.
Entering into the very limited worldview of my own childhood, right? Like just the association with like this cool band. That's how. Oh, okay. That's how you make the flute legit. That's where a dude could play flute, right? This is my teenager in me speaking.
Yeah, and maybe there was a time when tights and codpieces were the most manly apparel. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Fair enough.
But there's a track that they did on their album Song from the Woods that it's called The Whistler, and he actually plays a Little Generation tin whistle on it. So I was really into Toll. I saw that and I loved that track and thought, okay, I'm going to learn to play the tin whistle.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a lot of converging influences. And at the same time, one of my favorite movies was Waking Ned Devine, which has
good movie.
Such a good movie. It has an amazing soundtrack, and of course, the whistle playing in it is wonderful. I remember there's this one scene where it's like the funeral procession, and the procession is being led by the sound of a tin whistle. So there was that in the back of my mind too. And actually, I'm just realizing another influence. And I was a big Trekkie growing up, and there's for anyone that's really into Star Trek: The Next Generation, you'll know that there's an episode where Jean-Luc Picard picks up a tin whistle and learns to play it.
Yeah. That's one of the most beautiful episodes. It's the one where he gets to live an entire life in a simulation of a dead planet, right? Of a dead civilization.
That's the one.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Apparently, though, that whistle actually was not functional. It doesn't actually play. It was auctioned for a ton of money, but it doesn't actually work.
Yeah, so that's super funny. And I think, again, this is a story. Maybe we shouldn't look it up because it's delightful to think about. I think, if I remember right, I've heard somebody talking about how Patrick Stewart wasn't comfortable, like, pretending to be musical. Like, he knew he couldn't do it in a convincing way. And so they actually had somebody else who had an idea how to play whistles reach their hands around in the frame where he's playing it at the end, where he picks up the whistle and is like remembering. And it's somebody else's hands on that whistle. But wow. I think I heard that. I don't know.
That's an amazing story. I hope that one's true too.
Also, The Next Generation, my favorite Star Trek, and was there something subconscious about the word generation and how generation whistles are a big deal too? Was that maybe
I don't know. I think that's a really interesting observation. I don't know. So anyway, all those things kind of came together, and I thought, okay, I'm going to learn to play the tin whistle. And so I bought one and tried to begin teaching myself how to play. And you know, for the basics, it's really intuitive, but I wanted to play the Irish style. I wanted to play like it sounded on Waking Ned Devine. And so I pretty quickly realized that I needed some help. And so I just started, looking for teachers, and I stumbled upon, Dennis McMaster, who, of course, if you probably know,
Speaking of the McMasters.
Yeah, the old pipe major of the Salt Lake Scots, pipe major emeritus. And so he played whistle. He taught whistle lessons. He taught, of course, highland bagpipe lessons, and he also taught uilleann pipe lessons. But I went to him and just started taking whistle lessons from Dennis McMaster. So I did that for maybe, I don't know, a couple of years.
Was that when he had that Celtic Center in Salt Lake?
Yeah.
It's super cool,
actually,
man.
I started at the one in Midvale, so it was a really cool little spot in that downtown Midvale area. And then they moved to the location just off of the I-80 in Salt Lake City. But funnily, I was his student during this move, and somehow I never got the memo that they were moving locations. And so one day I just showed up, came for my lesson at the old shop, and it was gone. It was like an episode of The Twilight Zone. I'm like, what has happened? Has this whole thing been just a complete fantasy? Did it never exist? Like, oh well. And so
that's when you open up your bag where you had your whistle and there's no whistle there. It's like, what's been going on?
It's all been a dream, like Captain Picard.
Yeah.
But yeah, then a few weeks later, Dennis called me up and said, "Hey, I've been missing you. Where have you been?" I'm like, "Where have I been? Where have you been?
Where have you been?
Your shop is gone." So anyway, that was the Celtic Center. And then after a couple of years of taking tin whistle lessons from him, I wanted to learn the uilleann pipes. my
who could
interest
blame
really
you?
was
Yeah.
I was really into in Irish music, in Irish trad. And so he's like, okay, I'll teach you uilleann pipes, but we're going to have to get you a practice chanter, which, come to find out now, I didn't know back then, but nobody learns to play the uilleann pipes on a practice chanter. You learn on a practice set.
All due respect to the guy, I have heard like little rumors here and there that he was pushing pretty hard to sell people those uilleann practice chanters for a while there. That a lot of people weren't super into them, but he kind of felt like they should become a thing.
Yeah. And that was what happened with me. And so like, okay. And he said, well, there's an order in for these practice chanters and it's going to be in a couple of weeks. And when it comes in, I'll start you on the uilleann pipes. So like every week I would go for my whistle lesson. Like, okay, have they arrived? No, not yet. A couple more weeks. And this went on. I don't remember how long. It feels like it went on for months. It probably didn't go on that long. And finally he just said like, hey, you want to learn to play the highland pipes? I said, well, I have a practice chanter for the highland pipes. He said, yeah, you should learn to play highland pipes. You can join the band. We go to Scotland every year, which also turned out not to really be true. I think that's what they wanted to do, but
yeah.
they never went to Scotland while I was a member of the band. But that was the line. And so I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. While we're waiting for the uilleann pipe chanter.
In the meantime.
Yeah, exactly. I'll start learning Scottish pipes. So we started that, and I took to it pretty quickly. I mean, the whistle, even though it's really different, really helped, I think.
Dude, I wish, for a lot of reasons, but partly because it might help us to like get more kids into piping a little more easily. I wish we had my impression is that Ireland has this, where like instead of learning ukulele and recorders at schools, like kids are just learning penny whistle. And, like they're so cheap. Like it just feels like it could be a great win-win for the piping community and for the school districts to just turn everything into penny whistles. Let's just do penny whistles across the board.
Well, I totally agree, and that is my understanding of how it works in Ireland. But I've never been there, so I don't know for sure. So that's kind of the way I got into it, and then didn't take long. I think the Salt Lake Scots seemed like they were always looking, maybe all pipe bands, always looking for more members, more pipers to come and join the band. So it didn't take long before I had my uniform and my pipes, and I was showing up at the grade 5 band practice having no idea what I was doing and having to learn how to march in time to the pipes and even like having to learn how to strike up properly with the drums and that whole thing.
Yeah.
And at that point there was a grade 5 band and a grade 4.
That makes sense.
Yeah, a grade 4 band. And the grade 5 band was it was called the J.T. Dunny pipe band, and actually Larry Erdman was the pipe major for that group. And
I had no idea that they had a different name for it. That's
it was really part of the Salt Lake Scots. I'm not clear on why they had a different name for it, but they did.
The more that I like talk to people here locally, and like get these little bits and pieces about like our local pipe band history, the more I just think somebody's got to pull together some kind of anthology of like where it started and which turns it took, to get to where it is today.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Little details like that. Maybe I'm the one. The lights. Oh, there's a light shining down. There's a wind blowing through my hair. All of a sudden, I hear music on the wind.
You're being called. Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah. Anyway, so that's how it kind of happened, and then I stayed with the grade 5 band for I don't know, maybe 6 months or so, and then moved my way up into the grade 4. And at that point, Dennis was still pipe major of the grade 4 band. And then I stayed with the Scots. It was a number of years. Long enough that I was there when Dennis stepped down and Jason Kilpack came up as pipe major. And I played with the grade 3. The Scots had a grade 3 band for a while. I went to Canada a couple of times with the grade 3 band. But just like a lot of pipers do, I think I just kind of, my love and my passion sort of still was back with the more folk tradition and the whistle and the uilleann pipes. And so I enjoy being with the band a lot, and I still enjoy listening to pipe bands. But I just kind of grew tired of the competition element and the way that so much of the focus, at least to the Salt Lake Scots, and maybe it's different with other bands, but so much of the focus was playing the same tunes. Day in and day out, every practice, trying to prepare for competition. It's like, oh god, I'm really sick of these tunes. I'd really enjoy playing something different. So,
that is a constant struggle. I think, especially for like what you might call like community bands where like, the numbers are, you're at the mercy of convincing people to join, it's like, you end up with this mixed bag of people with a lot of experience and not very much experience, with a lot of enthusiasm, maybe not as much enthusiasm, a lot of time on their hands, no time on their hands. And some people, it's like, so then you're trying to like keep everybody happy enough that they'll stay in the band. It's like, you assign too much music and people are like, I quit, this is too much. You don't assign enough, people are like, I quit, this is too boring.
That's a hard thing. That speaks really true to my experience.
Then how long were you then like focused on Highland piping, and it was like years before? Have you got I'm trying to think now. Have I seen you playing uilleann pipes? I can't remember now if I have.
No, I have never picked up the uilleann pipes. I think a weakness I have as a musician is that I have too many interests, and I often I get to a certain point on an instrument which is not mastery but capable, and then I start looking for something else. And I've just discovered over the years that I have got to stop and focus in on the things that I really want to get good at. So for a while I was playing fiddle, and I got okay on fiddle, but I have to give that up because it's getting in the way of the other things, so
I'm just listening to you say that as I look around at all the shelves and stacks and wall mounts and more stacks and drawers full of various instruments which I have not mastered. I'm talking to you from a microphone that's mounted to the side of a pipe organ or an electric organ because I can't fit a desk in here anymore because of all the instruments that I haven't mastered that I just keep acquiring.
So, your music room sounds like it's very similar to mine.
Yep, I'm really vibing with you, man.
I never did the uilleann pipes, kind of regretfully, but at the same time, I found my way to other instruments that I really love. So the flute being one of them. That was not my original intention, but I loved the whistle.
Yeah,
and it's just a small leap from whistle to flute. It is a leap because of the embouchure, but it's not a huge leap.
That's what that embouchure is. What I have been very afraid of the flute. Even when I started to get over the idea that I could play flute too, right? Even though I have short hair. What was that idea anyway, right? Yeah. But I recently ordered just a simple cheap one of those. All of a sudden the name has left me. He makes a lot.
Dixon.
Yeah, it's a Dixon. One of those that you can pop the head off to have a whistle head or a flute head.
Yeah, Tony Dixon.
That's right. So I've got one on order right now. It's on its way, and I'm very excited about it. But I've avoided flute for a lot of years because I've been intimidated by even just the idea of figuring out how to get that embouchure to function. Yeah. But now that I'm thinking more no, maybe I can figure it out. Again, realizing I never master anything, right? But just for fun, right? I'm listening so much more closely to flute than I ever did before. And this rhythmic thing that comes out of folk flute, I've never appreciated before. And actually, this might be a great spot to pull another track from the album. Track 7 is called Sweet Molly.
Sure, yeah.
And if I'm hearing it right, you've got some pipes, but then at some point you put them down and pick up a flute.
Yeah, that's correct. And the second tune there goes into a flute section.
I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable that I'm saying this, which is going to make people like pay extra close attention to your flute playing when I play the sample of it, you know. But like I'm getting that magic here when I listen to you playing on here, that like rhythmic push, you know, that comes out. That's such a cool sound. I don't know what to ask you other than just like it's cool, right?
Well, and it's great that you're hearing that. That is why the flute, in my opinion, is a superior instrument to any tin whistle. Now, I love the high pitched tin whistles, and I think you can do all sorts of amazing things with them. But for a while, like before I made the leap to flute, I was doing a lot of low whistle playing. Even with the band, I was doing a lot of low whistle, and but you can't get that with a low whistle. You can get like just a pale imitation of it. Yeah. But the drive, the rhythmic drive you can get with the flute, you just can't find with the whistle. And so that was the thing finally that kind of convinced me that I had to go through the pain and difficulty of learning how to master the embouchure. So
did you feel driven when you first started playing flute? Did you feel driven to do that thing where you turn your head to the side and like rest your whole chin on your shoulder?
Oh yeah. You mean like where you rest? Yeah. So you're resting.
Or like you bring your shoulder to, like you're just like taking the end of the flute and your whole head and like resting it all on like
you're resting the flute on your shoulder. Yeah. That I experimented with that for a time because I came to the flute with a piper's grip, right?
Totally.
I'm a piper. So that's wonderful in many ways. It's a lot easier to cover the holes of the flute with a piper's grip, but the difficulty is then you're having to support the weight of the flute with your thumbs and just your thumbs. Yeah. And I start to get, even still, and I've been playing a lot of years now, but even still, I start to get cramps in my hands when I play the flute too long because I'm supporting it with the thumbs. And if you use the classical approach, you're supporting it more in a different way where you aren't just holding it up with your thumbs. You're actually kind of using the hand and then the wrist and the arm to support the flute more.
That is really interesting.
So it makes sense. If you're using the piper's grip, it makes a lot of sense to turn the flute over and to rest it on your shoulder. Yeah. Because then you've got another point of stability for the flute. So for some people, there are great flute players that do that. I mean, Conal O'Grada does that, and he's one of the best flute players in the world. For me, I started to get neck pain when I did that. So I just had to stop. And then for a while, I was trying to relearn my grip. I was trying to learn the classical flute grip. But I've just spent so many years on whistle and then low whistle and flute doing it, the piper's grip, that it's just a huge hurdle that I just don't know that I'm going to jump it.
This is one of those places where like I just like comfort myself by telling myself that a weakness is actually a superpower. Because like I have a brother-in-law who's a pretty darn good whistle player, and he started on high whistles, and he's working his way down to low whistles now, and he's finding it really difficult to either get the spread or learn piper's grip, right? And like I'm always telling my piper friends, like all pipers should also be whistlers. Everybody get a whistle. And it's like, you want to be cool, get like a low A or even right down to a low D. It'll be kind of unique. And you've got this superpower of the piper's grip. You've already got it, you know, and everybody will be jealous of your piper's grip. But, you know, of course, there's a reason why these other grips exist. It's because they're advantageous in other situations, you know, so.
Yeah, and there's a reason why so many pipers gravitate towards the low whistle, particularly Scottish pipers. I mean, in Scotland, I think the low whistle is way more popular than the flute. There are Scottish flute players, of course, but there are whistle players.
We watch any of our Highland piping heroes, right? Any album that they put out, you know, whether it's Fred Morrison or Ross Ainsley or any of these big guys who are our piping heroes, when they bust out a whistle. I mean, like, or rather, maybe what I'm trying to say really is like it's almost a guarantee that at some point to break up the set, they're going to bust out a low D whistle. That's just going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yep. So that you know makes sense, and that is a superpower. I think when you come from Highland piping to the low whistle, but then it does pose these other challenges with the flute, which can be frustrating.
Mm-hmm. So then, what like you still do pick up whistles though? Like I mean, shoot, we could even pull in another track. I think
sure.
the Cuckoo's Nest is one where I think I'm hearing you on whistle.
That's a low F whistle.
That's a low F. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Yeah, that was just one where I think sometimes you want that bubbly sound.
There is a thorn bush in old Kailyard. There is a thorn bush in old Kailyard. the backbone bush. There stand a lad and lass and a busy fairly out a cuckoo's nest. It is thorned, it is sprinkled, it is compassed all around. It is thorned, it is sprinkled, and it wasn't easy found. She said, young man, you're a blundering. He said it wasn't true, but he led me to the makings of the young cuckoo. It's hey the cuckoo, ho the cuckoo, hey the cuckoo's nest. It's hey the cuckoo, ho the cuckoo, hey the cuckoo's nest. He'll give anybody a shilling and a bottle of the best, just to lead him to the bough that bears the cuckoo's nest. It's hey the cuckoo, ho the cuckoo, hey the cuckoo's nest. It's hey the cuckoo, ho the cuckoo, hey the cuckoo's nest. He'll give anybody a shilling and a bottle of the best, just to lead him to the bough that bears the cuckoo's nest.
I mean, like when you set up, I was so looking for. My intention was to be there in May when you guys did your show at the library, and just like to take notes there, and then just like surprise you when we talked later. Because I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable, but like I kind of turn into a stalker with this show, and just kind of like I'm usually hemming and hawing and sweaty palms thinking about asking somebody to talk to me before I ever reach out to them. And that was my intention, but then I had a family thing come up, so I didn't end up being able to come. But one of the things I wanted to notice, but since I wasn't there, I couldn't notice, so now I get to just ask you directly, was have you figured out like a geography for how you set up when you're doing a show where you're going to be singing, piping, whistling, fluting, and what else? Tell me what else you do. Where like, do you have a position that you place all of these instruments in? Do you line up your whistles in order of key, right, from low to high or something? Like, what's your strategy there, or is there none?
Yeah.
Is it just chaos?
That's a great question, and maybe a question only another piper / whistle player would ever ask. But yeah, I've come to something over the years, and yeah, I mean, I think I've streamlined our shows a little bit. I used to bring highland pipes and small pipes and banjo, and even at one point I think I had a guitar and then multiple whistles. And nowadays I try to streamline it as much as possible. So sometimes I'll even plan our set list. Like, I don't want to bring a banjo to the set list, so we're not going to play that song.
Oh, sure. Or if you bring in a track that's going to require banjo, you're like, all right, we're not going to do it for just one track. We got to find another banjo track, or it's not worth it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not worth it. But with all the different keys of whistles and then the flutes, and even when I was doing back and forth between like highland pipes and small pipes, obviously you need a system for that. And so what I did, I actually saw, I wish I'm going to not remember his name. I saw another flute and whistle player locally here who would play at the Renaissance Fair every year. I saw that he had built himself a little whistle like stand.
This is me. Right now, I'm wishing I could be like, oh, that was me.
No.
It wasn't. Definitely wasn't.
It wasn't you. Yeah, his name will probably come to me. But he had it's just like a block of wood with dowel rods kind of sticking out.
Oh, yeah.
Really a simple construction, but I thought that's perfect. So I just went home and I built myself one of those stands. So I take that to all the shows, and that holds all my whistles and flutes, and I can set those in front of me. And then with the pipes, for a long time I've been using just a portable music stand that I can flop over and make kind of a little table, and then I can set my pipes on the portable music stand.
Yeah.
In the past, I've stood and sat. Nowadays, I just sit the whole time, which makes it easier in terms of microphone position.
When you were learning pipes, were you ever warned, like, never play pipes sitting down, you'll get a hernia?
No, I
was told that all the time. The first time I saw Fred Morrison sitting down to play highland pipes, and I was like, oh no! But it was a while after that I just thought, that guy's just crazy. He's just just risking it, or he's already herniated or something, right? And it was a long time before I realized, like, oh, skillful pipers aren't playing reeds that are like 2 2x4s strapped together with a leather belt. The pressure at which I'd been playing as a teenager was silly. And so it's like, if your instrument's set up right, sitting down to play really isn't that risky,
Yeah. Well, and I've never heard that either. And then, of course, in the Cape Breton piping tradition, it's more common than not for the dance pipers to be seated rather than to stand, because you have that footwork that they do, right? So the fiddlers, of course, are keeping time with their feet, and the old Cape Breton pipers would do the same thing. It's like a little simplified Cape Breton step dance.
Which I love. I love the sound of that so much.
Yeah, it's really cool. Barry Shears does a really nice job with that. That was one of the things he actually kind of taught us in his workshops, was how to stamp your feet in the Cape Breton style.
I keep thinking that, like, I'm not the guy to tell Barry Shears what to do, obviously, but like I mean, not even armchair dancer here, man. I'm not a dancer by any stretch of the imagination. Once again, when I was young, that was for girls, right? So I'm only very recently beginning to appreciate that, like, a lot of the music that I've loved and played for a long time makes a lot more sense when taken in the context of dancing. But so I would never tell Barry Shears what to do. But it does seem to me like it would be an awesome thing to follow up Play It Like You Sing It with Play It Like You Dance It.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, we were lucky in that workshop because, of course, one of Dennis's daughters, Erin McMaster, is a really good Cape Breton step dancer.
Oh yeah.
And so she was there for maybe, I don't know if she was there for the whole workshop, but certainly for some of it. And so she was able to do steps and show us some steps. So I don't remember if it was there that I learned it, but I do know, like, the basic steps, the real step and the jig step and the strathspey step for Cape Breton dancing, and it is helpful to have a sense for that, for sure.
When did you like, speaking of singing, I think I hear you singing in that track. Is it pronounced Sularoon? Sularoon.
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 Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I do sing in that. Just some harmony, some low harmonies in that song.
I will sell my rock, I will sell my reel, I will sell my only spinning wheel to buy my love a coat of steel. Jade the morning song. Shoo, 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 sugar, sugar, goose, sugar, killing, sugar, blues, Jade the morning song. I will dye my petticoats, I'll dye them red, and it's round the world I'll beg for bread until my parents would wish me dead. Jade the morning song. Shoo, 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 la loom, sugar, sugar, goose, sugar, queuing, sugar, doodle, sugar, say, loom, Jade the morning song.
That, and you've got a track, and I like that song, by the way, and you guys do it beautifully, just lovely. I think I heard it done by the band Andocus. one time.
I heard them.
They're good. They're good. They're real good. Not as good as Pennyland, obviously, but they're decent.
Yeah.
They're decent.
I'm sure.
You've got a track actually later in the album that, again, a thing I can't pronounce. Porchtabule, I think I hear people say it kind of like that.
Pushtabel.
Pushtabel, yeah. Okay. And
Pushtabel.
and I've got a really good friend, John Charles, he studies Pushtabel. Was that close? Everybody knows.
Yeah.
Y'all know what I'm going for anyway, right? He studies that and piping and Gaelic language in general. And a lot of cool stuff that's just beyond me, but it's very much like, I know that it's like it's the backbone of a lot of the stuff that bubbles to the surface that I do participate in. You know what I mean? So like I'm like aware that is informing the traditions that I participate in. Do you learn the languages, or are you doing like a phonetic way of learning the words you need to sing, or what's that like?
That's a great question, because here we are, we're all Americans and we're all Utahns, and
right, yeah.
None of us actually speak Scottish Gaelic.
Yeah.
So actually, the way that all started with the band singing in other languages besides English, we had a friend who briefly sang with the band, and this was a long time ago. This may have been 8 years ago or so. Who was from Ireland, and in Ireland, of course, all children now grow up learning Irish, learning Gaelic in school. Yeah, so she knew Irish, and so she sang a couple of Irish songs with the band, and then she got deported back to Ireland, unfortunately.
I don't feel like I hear much about people getting deported back to Ireland.
Well, it wasn't like, I'm going to come and find you and send you home kind of a situation. She was on her way back to the U.S. after a visit home. And they discovered in customs that she had been working as a nanny under the table. And so they barred her from re-entering the country.
That'll teach you to try to pay your way while you're in a different country.
Exactly. So we no longer had this Irish singer, yet we had these songs that we knew how to play.
Yeah.
And so Liz, the fiddler in our band, is one of her gifts. Not just in music, just in general, but she has an amazing ability to mimic language and accent. In fact, at the Evanston Festival, the Ceilidh at the Roundhouse Festival we do every year, often there is, they bring out bands from Ireland and Scotland, some of the best bands in the world come to that great festival. And often before the concert, they'll do like an Irish accent contest judged by the visiting musicians from Ireland, or a Scottish accent contest judged by the visiting musicians from Scotland.
Yeah.
Twice now, Liz has won those contests.
Oh, that's
because
awesome.
Her accent is so legitimate. It's so, it sounds so real. So she has this amazing ear for imitating. And so our long distance, from Ireland, this friend and singer, taught Liz the words to those songs. And so she learned them that way from her. And our friend Sinead from Ireland said that when Liz would sing them, she would sound like very cute, like a little Irish child singing those songs. Which
that could be
is a compliment and an insult at the same time, but
Now, are you doing a sneaky little drop to tell us kind of covertly off to the side, if we want to notice, that the Irish friend who came to play with Pennyland for a while and then got deported for working as a nanny was Sinead O'Connor?
Yes, it was O'Connor. Don't tell anybody. No, it was Sinead, and honestly, I can't remember her last name. My knowledge is very embarrassing.
You know what? It might have
not Sinead O'Connor.
It might have actually been O'Connor, just a different Sinead O'Connor, because that's a very Irish name, right? So I've got to imagine the countryside there is just full of Sinead O'Connors, just like dotted as a field dotted with sheep. There are girls named Sinead O'Connor walking around Ireland, I assume. Once again, it's a mythical place in my mind. So, and boys named Patrick, I assume.
Yeah. So when we started picking up the Scottish songs, the Scottish Gaelic songs, all of those came from old field recordings.
Oh yeah, my impression is that's where all that comes from, for sure. Yeah.
Yep. So that's how we learned them, and then it was just a matter of Liz, in combination with some research. So Liz would listen and try to imitate. And then I would find the words as well. And anything we were unclear about, I would just go to like Gaelic pronunciation guides and try to like figure out how to best approximate this. And so I would be rather embarrassed to have an actual Gaelic, native Gaelic speaker listen to versions of these songs, then
Yeah.
sure, there are big errors in them. But we just do our best.
I
And because we love the Gaelic music. I mean, the Gaelic songs are just some of the best I think in all of the kind of Celtic traditions. The Scottish Gaelic songs are, in my opinion, some of the most beautiful.
Yes, and I, again, I'm just a dude from Utah, but I think y'all do a great job. I think they're beautiful to listen to.
Well, thank you.
I'm reminded of a joke that I think it was the Kingston Trio, maybe it was the Limelighters who made this joke where they were about to launch into a song in French, but as like a disclaimer, they're like, and for anybody in the crowd who speaks French, this is Creole French. And for anybody in the crowd who speaks Creole French, this is Northwestern Creole French, as spoken in Idaho. And then they launched into the song.
Oh, I'm going to remember that. That's perfect.
There you go.
Add that to our set.
Yeah, add that to your banter between tunes.
Gogan achin mor bugalan and gavna, really gogan achin mor bugalan and gavna, really gogan achin mor bugalan and gavna, really gogan achin mor bugalan and gavna, skinners tiny hanny cousins, gani cousin gilda, kin kigir farish, a hop is animal and towns, skinners tiny hanny cousins, gani cousin gilda, kin kigir Bukalan and Gavna, really gogan achin mord, Bukalan and Gavna, really gogan achin mord, Bukalan and Gavna, scanners tiny hana cousins, gonna cousin gelda, kinkigir barish, a hop a son of my lad in towns, scanners tiny hana cousins, gonna cousin gelda, kinkigir barish, a hop a son of my lad in towns, put a nail and hook a melon, hook a melon, hook a put a nail and hook a secretary and toilet, put a nail and hook a melon, hook a melon, hook a put a nail and hook a secretary and toilet, hot chip, feel like Greg, and a cosplay, hot chip, feel like Greg, hot chip, feel like hot chip, feel like Greg, and a cosplay, hot chip, feel like Greg, hot chip, feel like. daar på Zeefesta. Hatchit, filligreek, hatchit, like. Hatchit, filligreek, daar på Zeefesta. Hatchit, filligreek, hatchit, like.
Get deep with me for a minute here. Do you think that Liz's ability to mimic like spoken accents, do you think that, or even just like whole words, like, do you think that that in any way translates to, is affected by, or is related to an ability to approximate musical idiom as well?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, Liz didn't really come to the band with a whole lot of experience within that idiom, within the Scottish or even Irish fiddling traditions. She had some exposure and experience, but a lot of what she has kind of developed over the years has just come through listening and imitating other fiddlers. And so, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I've neglected so far to ask you more specifically about the band. I should clarify that in the show notes, I'll have the name of the band spelled out and a link to the Bandcamp page and to the website and stuff like that. But Pennyland is the name of the band. I really, this album, this Pain album, I keep wanting to say Panini, but that's because I love bread.
I know. That's the problem with Gaelic words. Right?
Yeah.
There's all these extra letters, or apparently extra letters.
Right. Yeah. It is like, it does feel very much like Pembroke, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Really 11, 12, 14 letters? How much does it take? But the cover art as well. I love this cover art. Did a member of the band come up with it, or did you hire an artist that you knew, or where did the cover art come from? It's like this like cut block style Loch Ness monster. Super cool.
Yeah. So that's a lino cut that Liz actually did. She came up with the idea. Dang. Yeah. That we could have the Great Salt Lake with the spiral jetty and the Tree of Life, which is nearby,
oh my gosh,
and
dude.
Then the Loch Ness monster.
I didn't even realize. I just thought. I mean, it's a cool image anyway, right? But I did not even. Of course, that's the spiral jetty and the Tree of Life. That's so cool. Now it's just like gone up another 20 points in coolness. That's way cool.
Yeah, thanks. We like that image.
You ever hear the fun old stories about how like there's a subterranean tunnel that connects Lake Loch Ness to the Salt Lake, to the Great Salt Lake?
Oh, I haven't heard that.
Oh yeah. There's people with those kinds of stories.
Wow. Yeah, that gives even more justification to the image. I like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So then, what like, if you were to talk, let's say you are talking to pipers here mostly, pipers and piping adjacent people, we got. I'd like to think I appeal to drummers sometimes too. But if you were talking to someone coming from highland piping who's like, well, shoot, I love the idea of playing with other instruments. Sounds really fun, seems really cool. Whether they're going to pursue this in a professional way to get gigs or just to join in on a session. What do we need? Like what things should we learn? What instruments do we like? Do I need to go buy a Blair digital chanter? Do I need to get border pipes? Should I get whistles and flutes? And maybe that's like the equipment side of things. But then there's also the question of like, what things do I need to learn musically? And also like almost, I want to say culturally almost, right? Because like you mentioned, playing with a pipe band is a very different thing than sitting in a living room and playing with a fiddler and a guitarist and stuff like that. What comes to mind as I ask you those questions?
Yeah, those are great questions. So, in terms of, I guess the equipment and the other part of the question are related. So, I mean, what comes to my mind is identifying like what a group that you want to play with. So whether that's just like maybe one or two other individuals, or do you want like, I know, for me, with the group that I first started going out and playing this kind of music with was Larry's, session group that would meet pretty regularly at the time. I don't think he does anymore, unfortunately.
He's been talking about starting it up again, but it's been
So that was a great thing for me, and I had just identified that's going to be my outlet for now. And so that then gave me like, okay, so it's going to be Cape Breton and Scottish music, and it's going to be a lot of small pipes. So I kind of knew then what things would be appropriate for that setting. So like I got a set of small pipes. I've been through a number of sets, but I got small pipes, and I already played the whistle, and so I started learning those tunes that I knew that were part of that session on the whistle. So that was really, really helpful. It can be so daunting because the repertoires are so huge, and especially when you start combining like Scottish, Cape Breton, and Irish all together. That's just so many tunes to learn.
Dude,
so I think so go ahead. Yeah.
You seriously, I have a problem with interrupting people anyway, but honestly, you are really impressing me with your ability to hang on to a thread while I interrupt you. And I think to some degree, I'm now just trusting in that and just letting my guard down completely and interrupting
you're
freely.
Fine, yeah.
But do you know Mark? And now his last name is blanking. I want to say Stevenson, who's up in northern Utah. He's an uilleann piper, and he's got some sessions going too. Dude, I reached out to him and just was like, I think I'd like to join in some sessions sometimes. And he's like, and so he sent me links to some of the tune books they use. And even just from those tune books, I don't know how many hundreds of tunes it is, right? But it's hundreds,
exactly.
You know?
Yep. And those guys like Mark has been doing it so long, like that's not daunting to him. Right. He has hundreds of tunes at his fingertips. But for someone trying to get into it, that's really hard. So you can, that's another example of like, you could identify that community and say, okay, I want to join Mark's sessions. And then you know what instruments to look at. You don't want to do small pipes because they're not going to fit in with hardly any of the tunes, maybe a couple. You can do whistle or pick up the banjo or, other things. And then it's a matter of, with the Irish groups, I think going and actually hearing what tunes are being played. Mm-hmm. And that requires you to show up, a few times or a number of times where you're not playing much of anything. Mm-hmm. And you're really just listening to what tunes are played and what tunes seem to be played consistently. Because it feels like, from my experience in sessions, in Irish sessions, is that there's sort of like the body of tunes that get played pretty consistently. And then there's like the peripheral tunes around that just kind of find their way in, but don't really get the traction. So if you can kind of start to identify what are the main body of tunes that kind of keep coming up, then you know what to focus your time on. And with most Irish sessions, like Mark's and the other one that happens in Salt Lake, they always go around the circle and give people a chance to start something of their own. So, you prepare a set of a few tunes, and you know that when it's your turn, you'll get a chance to play something. You don't have to just sit and listen the whole time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would let the group that you plan to play with sort of decide for you what instrument you bring to it and what tunes you learn.
Well,
because then you're going to have the most success. Sorry, go ahead.
No, like I say, I'm just interrupting like crazy here. But
no, you're good.
Correct me if I'm taking your advice too far, but it sounds to me like you maybe also like if it's not a session situation you want to do. So like first it's figuring out what you want to do. Maybe if it's something else, find a band that does that something else that you want to be like them, and then just copy them. And as far as like what instruments do you get kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and honestly, in some ways, Pennyland was born out of truly my frustrations with the kind of session scene, because it's a lot of fun and you learn a lot of tunes. But the trouble is that I prefer it when the music is very well played and there's sort of kind of some craft to it, and it's people are playing all together at the same tempo and are playing the same basic melody lines, and you're not having a lot of veering away from the tune where it gets it can be, I guess what I'm saying is it can be a little bit chaotic and not all the music sounds it can run the gamut from sounding really pretty great to sounding kind of pretty terrible.
You know what they say though, at an Irish session, if it's not sounding really pretty great, you're just not you're not enough pints in yet.
or you're the one that's ruining it.
Or you're too far. Yeah, you're too many pints in or something, right?
Yeah. So anyway, the band was more like, okay, let's focus on arrangement and really playing tunes well together, and not just everyone on melody. How can we vary things and spice it up a bit and bring harmony and that kind of thing, which is honestly at the end of the day is more interesting to me than the session scene. But
this is me as a different person, like taking this tiny little snapshot of your life that's not at all a fair assessment or anything like that, but it starts to feel to me like I can almost draw this like triangle shape where it's like you get what's good out of being in a pipe band and get and recognize some of the things that just aren't jiving with you. Then you get what's good out of playing in a session and recognize some things that aren't quite jiving with you, and you kind of create your own thing that's right in the middle, where there's some rehearsal and some sort of like arrangement and preparation of specific tunes, but also there's a lot of variety still, kind of a thing in the middle.
Yeah, that's very insightful. I hadn't drawn that triangle for myself, but I think you're absolutely right.
Well, I have a little statue of the Laughing Buddha on my desk, so I'm kind of wise,
Yeah.
Soak it in there, As I work on my spreadsheets, I get more and more enlightened when I'm sitting near it. So then, what else do you like as a guy who plays with pipe band, plays with like a trad band and stuff like that? Like, what do you listen to? Is it trad stuff and pipe stuff all the time, or are you disconnecting from that and listening to a lot of, like, I don't know, funk music or something totally different?
Yeah, that's a great question. The older I get, the pickier I become about what I listen to. I don't know if that's normal or not. Just not as much stuff. I don't know, tickles me as it once did.
Yeah.
But I would say I listen to a lot of folk music, and some of that is like Irish trad. I've gotten more interested in. So my introduction into the world of like Irish traditional music was bands. I really loved the band, so I listened to a ton of Lunasa, who I still really respect and like.
Yeah.
But as I've grown up a little more, and I've listened to more and more of the music, and I play more of the music, I find myself drawn more and more to just solo playing. So like pure drop solo playing.
That pure drop
I have
stuff, gotcha.
Yeah. So I listen to a fair amount of that. And then I still have the bands I really love right now. Like I don't know if you've listened to Skipper's Alley at all from Ireland.
I haven't, no.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, they actually were one of the bands that were brought out to the Evanston Festival a number of years back, that we actually performed at the festival with that same year.
And were you already a fan of theirs? So that was like a really big deal for you?
I had never been exposed to their music.
Great way for it to be introduced, huh?
Yeah, I went to their evening concert, and was just totally blown away. Maybe the best concert I've ever been to.
Did you turn to your band and be like, we're giving our slot to these guys. I want to hear the set again.
Well, my thought was like, how can we become these guys? Like,
yeah.
This is unreal. And then another great Irish band I'm really enjoying that apparently the members of Skipper's Alley and the members of this band were all in school together. But the Bonnie Men are a really fabulous Irish trad band, and their most recent album is just brilliant. So I have and then in the Scottish tradition, I really love Van Dive. It's a
I have listened to
DIMH. Yeah, they're great. They also were brought out to the Evanston Festival. So I got to see them live there too, but they're one of my favorites. And then I just, I love the classics. I love the Chieftains. You can always go back to the Chieftains. Of course, there's just a wealth of stuff there. So
yeah, my good friend Andrew O'Sullivan, who interestingly too, he also does some Gaelic language study and stuff like that, and has turned me on to some insights in terms of like how the spoken language informs some of the music that we then play on pipes in some ways. But he's the guy who most often I'm seeing post a tune and he says, identify this tune, and I totally can't. And then he tells me what it is. Like, oh yeah, of course. He introduced me to Dive not too long ago, and I'm sure glad he did. It's been so cool to catch up on their albums, because they just put an album out like this year, like even like a month or two ago, or was it last year?
If they did, I missed it. The last one I know of is what is it called? It's a yellow cover with like a sailor on the front with his arms folded. Is that the one you're talking about?
I think that is one I'm thinking of. And so this might be yet another situation where, of course, the world revolves around me, and so new to me means new to everyone, right? Like I just found this guy Seamus Ennis. Have you heard his stuff? He's very underground, right?
he's awesome. I love Seamus Ennis. Yeah, I think that album came out maybe 2 years ago ish.
Yeah.
Or maybe right before the pandemic. I got an early copy of it from their guitarist, Martin Ross, I think is his name. He and his wife were doing a tour in the U.S. and they came to perform a little concert in Provo that I got to go to.
Oh,
and
dude.
he secretly sold me one of their new albums under the table. Like, here, you can have it. Don't tell anyone.
That is too cool.
So yeah, he's great. He's like one of the best performers I've ever seen. He's like part musician and part comedian. His like talk between sets is so funny and so good. But anyhow,
that's
and I guess besides the trad stuff, so I do listen to a lot of that. But the other thing I've been really listening to a lot lately is American traditional music. So old time music. That's been kind of my new passion for the last few years. I picked up the 5-string banjo and been trying to learn fiddle tunes from our tradition. So
have you been doing any of that claw hammer style playing on your banjo?
That's what I do. Yeah. So I play with the Pennyland. I play Irish banjo, so tenor banjo. But clawhammer is what I'm doing on the 5-string now. Yeah.
Look, Robert, if you and I ever find ourselves with absolutely nothing else to do, please teach me how to play clawhammer. I've had a banjo for so many years, and I swear I think I've actually put time into it. Like, I think it's not just an idle dream. Like, I've tried, I just cannot get it to work. And that's why I want to play banjo. So like, I'm doing all these other things with it that just like aren't what I wanted, and I can't do the thing I wanted.
Yeah, it can be tricky. My first 5-string banjo I bought when I was maybe 19, a long time ago. And I tried to teach myself it for a while, and just like, I just didn't come. But then just, during the pandemic, actually during lockdown, I just decided like, okay, I'm going to just hunker down and I'm going to figure this out. And so I actually bought a better banjo than the one I had, and spent that whole time, and I guess for the last, how long, it's been 3 years, really focusing on that. And it's snuck up on me as maybe my favorite instrument to play. Surprisingly.
Ooh, really?
Yeah. It's just, I don't know. There's something really, relaxing about it. Like it has pieces of like what I love about playing dance music, of course, on the whistle and on the flute and on the bagpipes. It has that, right? Cause you can play fiddle tunes, and that's what I primarily do on clawhammer banjos, play the fiddle tunes. But at the same time, you've got these elements of guitar. So my guitar background comes in. You've got harmony that you can provide. So it's like you're not only playing the melody, you're providing your own harmony at the same time. And then like finding ways, the 5-string banjo and clawhammer style in particular, it's like you take a fiddle tune, and then if you're not just learning it from someone else's arrangement, right? You're not just picking up someone else's tab and copying them. If you're coming up with your own arrangement, it's like this little puzzle you have to figure out. Like, how can I make this fiddle tune fit into the rhythm of the clawhammer stroke? How can I make sure that I get all of the important, most significant melody notes?
Oh, yeah.
And what ones can I leave out? Because you have to leave a lot of them out in order to play up to speed, really. Unless you're one of these guys that plays a fiddle style 5-string banjo, and there are those guys out there, and they're playing really just fiddle melodies. But that's not what interests me. I'm more interested in like how the 5-string banjo is a cross section between a melody instrument and a rhythmic instrument. So something about that. It's like you're your own band. You're a one-man band. That I don't find on other instruments.
That's so cool. I love it. I love it when there's something that like, and I'm cautious about this because I recognize that like sometimes you hear something put really well, and subconsciously you wish you had been that eloquent, and so then you go, oh, I always thought that. You're finally saying what I already thought, But I think genuinely what is happening in my head right now is this thing where like you like something, but you're not quite sure why. But then when you hear somebody articulate it, you start going, yes, that's exactly that's why it's special. And that was just happening as you talked about that. That was cool.
Cool. That's a cool experience to have.
There's also like, I don't know if this is like a developing tick in me as I get older or what, but I feel like I have to say that before Bobby had a bad banjo, but Bobby bought a better banjo. I needed that to come out.
There's
B is my favorite consonant to alliterate with, and so that just had to come. Now, Robert, I mean, I've taken a lot of your time, and here's the other thing. I want to make sure the entire world of listenership, which recognizing that we're a very small group, but a happy and love each other kind of group here, and I am appreciative of the community. But I want everybody to know, right, that I stood you up not long ago.
Why are you telling everyone that?
I wanted people to know how darn generous you are. You've been so chill and cool about it. I don't trust my brain for a lot of things, and it's less trustworthy all the time, other than like forcing me to say alliterative verse, apparently. But the calendaring thing has just become more and more of a thing that I just outsource completely to my computer. And I told you that we were good, and I told you I'd send you a calendar invite, and then I didn't even set it up, and then you emailed me one day, and I was like, who's this guy? Oh my gosh, and totally had missed it. and you were totally cool to read, and like here you just been so cool. I appreciate it. You're very even keeled, and I think that's admirable.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate your transparency about it all.
Well, yeah,
There's no need for that.
Once I've screwed up enough times, there's nothing left to. There's no reputation left to salvage, honestly. So that's the thing. So I was thinking, if it works for you, Robert, that a cool outro. Actually, you did that like consolation concert that's on YouTube, and I thought that here's another word I can't pronounce. Bain Eadara.
Oh, Benectra.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
I thought it was so pretty. And I thought that would be a lovely closing tune. So if that works for you, we'll do that one. But before we do that, I want to try this thing that we've never done before. So if it crashes and burns, it's my fault. But knowing that you've studied folklore and that you're into music and being aware that the Beatles were trying to put together a film version of The Lord of the Rings that they would star in, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, did you not know about that? Oh, that was a thing.
No.
It never happened, unfortunately. The Tolkien estate wasn't into it, but they wanted to do it. I wish they would have.
Wow.
Okay, well, with that now in mind, starting with Jethro Tull, okay? Ian Anderson, right? He was our flautist and stuff like that. Okay, we're going to cast a new Lord of the Rings movie, okay?
Wow.
So, and we're going to fantasy cast it from folk musicians, okay? So we get to use our folk musician heroes, you know? Like, I don't know, maybe Seamus Ennis will be like one of the wizards, but will he be Sauron or will he be Gandalf? Or Saruman or Gandalf? I'm not sure which one. Okay, but here's where I want to start. Definitely Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull, young Ian Anderson with all his hair and everything, right?
Yeah.
He's Tom Bombadil. That's my submission. He's got to be Tom Bombadil.
Wow, that's perfect. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Isn't that a perfect fit?
Maybe Gandalf, but no, Tom Bombadil, yeah.
Even better, right? He's got to be Tom Bombadil.
Yeah.
Okay, so now your turn. Any trad musician that comes to mind, what Lord of the Rings character do you want to cast them as?
Oh my word, this is a hard question. You probably can edit out all of my think time.
I can. We'll see if anybody who's stuck around this long is probably going to be chill with some think time, no problem. And like my mind's racing right now too, trying to think of anybody else. Like there's an immediate click in my brain. It's like, dude, that guy.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, I think I would submit Paddy Maloney, right? So the chieftain's front man, and he has to be a hobbit of some kind.
Yeah,
probably Bilbo. I'd say Paddy Maloney is Bilbo.
That's beautiful. So what about who's now I said I'm getting nervous from this myself. I shouldn't have set this up, but the really cool rough and tumble looking front man of the Dubliners. What was his name with the big orange fro?
Golly, I can't think of his name. I don't know who you're talking about.
Right?
Yeah.
This is
ridiculous.
Google
it really quick.
Yeah, that's okay. So that guy though, and it'll come to us either via the internet or our brains will do the work to get it to us. That guy, Luke Kelly.
Yep.
Luke Kelly. What if he is Aragorn or Strider, right? But like he's Strider Aragorn, right? So like he's like the rough and tumble version of Aragorn that they meet in the tavern. But like through the course of the story, he becomes like more and more ennobled, and by the end, he's like this noble king version of Luke Kelly, taking over in Gondor.
Yeah, I like that.
If you've got one more, give me one more. If you don't, I won't put you under pressure to do it.
Okay, I think let's see. So I wanna place Shane MacGowan somewhere in it. You know, the front man from the Pogues.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Look, it's probably so mean and not nice, but
Go ahead.
I couldn't help thinking of his teeth, later on in life, especially, and that's pretty darn Gollum-y.
Or yeah. I think you got it. I think it has to. He's amazing, but I think that's a fit.
I mean, and maybe in like a very sympathetic way too. There are elements of sadness in both stories and tragedy.
Yeah.
Well, so that said, let's go into that tune. Do you have anything you wanted to tell me about that tune before we listen to it, and we'll just kind of fade off into it?
Sure. Yeah. So that tune is pretty special to the band just because we learned it directly from Julie Fowlis, the great Scottish Gaelic singer. So she came out to do a concert at at the University of Utah before the pandemic. I'm trying to remember, maybe a year or two before the pandemic. But they just randomly, I think they just had time for her to fill and didn't know what to do with her. And so randomly the university reached out to Pennyland and said, hey, do you guys want to come and do a workshop with Julie Fallis? I'm
wow.
Yes, please. And so, well, not the whole band, but most of the band was able to make it. We went and did a private workshop with Julie Fallis, and she taught us a number of Gaelic songs. And sadly, that's the only one that we've really kept with the band. The other ones kind of faded away. But yeah, we love that song. And it is an example of Porche de Belle, but it's a modern composition. So most Porche de Belles are traditional, really old traditional tunes with words that have been passed down. Who knows where they came from? But this was an attempt by, and I don't remember the man's name now, but a contemporary Scottish musician to take a really popular tune in the tradition and turn it into a Porche de Belle. So he wrote all of those Gaelic words and put it to the music. So that's kind of where it comes from.
Haishin Suez, Suez Gavane, Dara Suez Kana, Viner Sanush Griol. Haishin Suez, Suez Gavane, Dara Suez Kana, Viner Sanush Griol. Ekdara Suez Gavane, Dara Suez Kana, Viner Sanush Griol. Ekdara Suez Gavane, Dara Suez Kana, Viner Sanush Griol. Haishin Suez, Suez Gavane, Dara Suez Kana, Viner Sanush Griol. Haishin Suez, Suez Gavane, Dara Suez Kana, Viner Sanush Griol. Ekdara Suez Gavane, Dara Suez Kana, Viner Sanush Griol. Ekdara Suez Gavane, Dara Suez Kana, Viner Sanush Griol. Suez Kana Viner Sanush Griol. Haishin Suez, Suez Gavanek, Dara Suez Kana Viner Sanush Griol. Ekdara Suez Gavanek, Dara Suez Kana Viner